Hey everyone and welcome back. In today's video we're going to be going through all 40 centre-back targets we've been linked with. No, we're not. We're not going to be doing that because we'll be here all day. We're going to have a bit of fun today, well hopefully a bit of fun, a bit of depressive fun, and look back at the 2017 transfer market because Andrea Conti's just recently gone to Sampdoria on a permanent deal. He is the penultimate signing from that transfer market. Just leaving Franck Kessie as well with a contract expiring this summer, so potentially he is the last one going out in 6 months' time or less than that now. It's going to hopefully be a bit of fun to look back at that and look at the mistakes of the past and showing that quantity doesn't always equal quality when it comes to transfer signings and the quickest way to spend over 200 million euros. But before we do that, we just want to recap on a quick, good back-to-back victories against Venezia and Roma, two solid, mid-table / below mid-table sides. Sorry, Roma fans. Two solid victories. That's exactly what we wanted to go into the Coppa Italia fixture against Genoa, and obviously the next home fixture in Serie A against Spezia to hopefully pick up 2 more wins and the momentum flowing going into the Juventus game. Look, we're playing really well considering the fact that we've lost players from COVID. Now recently they're coming back. Tomori's now back into the first team squad. We had to put up with playing Kalulu and Gabbia at centre back positions, who are kind of like our 4th and 5th choice in that department. The team's done really well since that. Lots of goals, fantastic to see. Even the clean sheet against Venezia. Look, good performances all round. So let's get straight into today's video. Alright, let's get straight into it. First up is Leonardo Bonucci. We spent 42 million euros on this guy from Juventus at the age of 30 in his prime. A lot of these deals kind of make sense when you really look at it and you kind of say like, all right, yeah, if it goes a different way, if management had an ideology of how we're going to play and recruitment was a little bit better sort of collectively, apologies for that, this deal potentially would have gone a different way and it could have ended up in a successful deal. But Bonucci nonetheless was playing crap when he joined us. Defensively looked really poor. Romagnoli was outperforming him. We'd already signed a centre-back in Matteo Musacchio, so it was kind of like, I didn't quite understand why we were signing another one unless we were going to play a 3 at the back formation, which he tried and it was just didn't suit us at all. So that's, in a sense, is a failure there. But individually, as a player, Bonucci just wasn't good. He wasn't showing the defensive calibre performances of a world-class player that we were expecting. Then going to the attacking department, we signed a player who I had a lot of hope for, which was Andrea Silva. 38 million euros, signed at the age of 21 from Porto. I got it. It was a signing for the now and potentially for the future, especially considering his age at 21. He had a lot of good hype coming from him from Portugal. I liked the signing at the time because we were looking at someone that we could see being our striker for a long time coming. And once again, the environment didn't help. What formation were we playing? We already had signed another striker. Well, no, we signed another striker after in Kalinic. We had a striker coming from the youth side, Patrick Cutrone. This was a complete mishmash of a transfer market, and it's a shame because Andrea Silva ends up going to Eintracht Frankfurt on a loan deal. We get Rebic in exchange and swap the contracts, getting no value pretty much back from him. To be honest, when you consider him to the values that we get back for players, he's kind of one of the ones that comes out good because we got Rebic out of it, whereas the others are not so good. Bonucci as well, I forgot to mention as well, Bonucci ends up going back to Juventus the following summer, because he just doesn't quite like life at Milan, ends up falling on his sword, and we sold him back to Juventus and we buy Caldara back and Higuain, and we're going to have to talk about that so much as well. So yeah, this is going to be a running theme of the video, that the value we get back for players isn't good at all really. Next up is a player who's recently gone to Sampdoria. I mentioned before at the start of the video, Andrea Conti. Signed for 24 million euros from Atalanta, was playing good football for them. I liked him. He was a boyhood Milan fan, played with another player we signed that window, Franck Kessie. Once again, I think we signed him to be a right back because he was traditionally a right wing back. Suffered with a lot of injuries, Calabria's form increasing as well. He was one I don't want to sort of hammer too much home on attack on, because I do really feel bad for the lad, because if he didn't have the injuries, things would have gone differently. But once again, it's just a lot of money spent on a player who didn't really give us much output. Next up is the one who shall not be named, Voldemort. Just joking. Hakan Çalhanoğlu. We signed him for 23.3 million euros from Bayer Leverkusen. He was 23 at the time. I believe he had 6 months off for some sort of suspension. I can't remember what it was for in particular, but he wasn't match fit, struggled to get that fitness really in and recruit that momentum, that rhythm in his game. And to be honest, when we look back at his Milan career, we see a lot of goals, we see a lot of assists, a lot of involvement, a lot of minutes. Always available, rarely injured. It wasn't a failure completely. I think he was just a victim of the times that there wasn't quite a good ideology of where management was taking his team. And, different coaches when he was there, eventually walks on the free transfer. And this was also another massive problem with his transfer market, let alone the money spent. It was the money that these players were put on their contracts, which basically meant renewals. And we're seeing this right now. Kessie is very hard to do because they're already on a salary which is kind of a bit above than what they should already be on. So when it comes to contract renewals, you don't really have the leverage because they're already on a contract that they shouldn't be on. They want to double, if not triple their salary, which makes them go into sort of like figures that doesn't represent their actual true value. So, Çalhanoğlu, Kessie are victims of this. And if we were going to get into potential renewals of players like Silva or Andrea Conti, if they played quite well, we would have the same issue here as well. But Çalhanoğlu ends up walking on the free transfer to Inter Milan. The less we talk about, the better, because obviously losing a player on a free is never good. And that just makes look back at that and just, it's a shame because we didn't get any value back from him. Next up, we spent 80 million euros on defender Matteo Musacchio from Villarreal. I liked him because of I think this is a problem. We kind of think of players that we hear from on FIFA and stuff like that, and they're good, we should sign them, we're linked with them, we should sign them. And we got the signing over the line, and 80 million euros is a respective deal when you think about it, but when you think about the players we sign now for that figure, it's mental to think the quality that you can get really when you're scouting is accurate. Musacchio wasn't the centre-back I think we were sort of hoping for, the long-term solution. We put him next to Romagnoli in some games, like I mentioned before, that Bonucci came in as well, so sometimes we were playing him as a defensive free. We already had Zapata. It just, he was a representation of the time, which was just not good enough. Not good enough to, evolve as a top into a better club. And he was a very one-dimensional centre-back and eventually ends up going on pretty much a free, I believe it was to Lazio last winter. The winter market of 2021. And yes, once again, recurring theme that we don't get any value back, any good value back for these players other than sort of shifting their contracts off for the last couple of years of their initial deal that they signed for Milan. Very similar to Musacchio was Ricardo Rodriguez. We signed him for 15 million euros from Wolfsburg. He was 24 at the time. Once again, a lot of hype because he was a Swiss international. He scored, contributed to a lot of goals. He took penalties. He took free kicks. He was a player I wasn't quite complaining about when we came. I didn't complain about pretty much any of these signings other than the kind of ones towards the end of the list. But Rodriguez had a bit of international experience, club experience playing the Champions League and the Europa League for Wolfsburg. I like the signing, but really when we look at him back right now, and we see someone like Theo Hernandez, a complete stud at left back, and Maldini, the scouting was right. And this is the problem, like Musacchio, like Rodriguez, and like some of the players already mentioned. We just got it wrong there. He wasn't giving us the attacking efficiencies that we wanted at the left back position, and ends up, I believe, walking on pretty much a free to Torino. I'll skip past him, but I'm not going to forget him, is Lucas Billiard. We spent 19.7 million euros on this guy, 31 years old. We risked a lot on this guy. We risked a lot on it. And obviously, we wanted a bit of experience, I believe, at the side at the time because we only signed Bonucci, or the sort of the other player who was in his prime. And we took a sort of a calculated risk, which ended up being a bad risk on Billiard. Suffered, I believe, it was a few injuries. Couldn't quite find his way in the side. Was deprived players like Locatelli or first team minutes. So we got to really look back on this guy as a complete bust. He wasn't good at all. He looked so static. The best times he actually played well was next to Kessie in midfield when Kessie was able to do a lot of running around for him. But yeah, Billiard was another complete bust, and Lazio were probably laughing when they got 20 million euros for a guy who was 31 years old and out of the way of his best form. Next up is Franck Kessie, still with us right now. Look, Kessie is the one player, he's the best player from this list, hands down the best player from this list, but once again, it's a shame that he's potentially going to be leaving on a free transfer. We signed him for, it was an 8 million loan deal, which I believe, and then 22 million euros on top of that to sign him outright from Atalanta. Kessie has been fantastic. He signed at the age of 20, but once again, he was put on a high contract when Mirabelli signed him, which didn't help things. Obviously, in the case of the renewal that we're seeing right now. Kessie's the one I'm not really going to talk much about because he has been relatively solid. Last season was fantastic. This season he's been relatively good, other than a bad run of form. I do believe it comes from his contract expiration looming. So yeah, less I'll talk about the Kessie, the better, because I think he is the one player I can look at this transfer market and say, you were good. Nikola Kalinic, 5 million euros on a loan deal. I think we then spend another like 20 million on top of that to sign him from Fiorentina. He was 29 at the time. 29 at the time. We spent like Billiard. Like what? I don't understand why we signed him. We already had strikers in his side. I get we needed backup options. I think Bacca was shifted out that summer as well. Kalinic was such but I think we all knew that he was going to be a bust anyway. It was a bit of money to spend on the guy who was, coming out of his prime. So he didn't really have that prime anyway. None of us really saw him being that, successful striker we needed right now in the moment. I don't understand why management sort of were attracted to him. Maybe it was Montella being his ex-Fiorentina roots. That was when I said to go down his head as well. It was complete bust. I can't even remember what happens to him. I think he ends up walking on was it Atletico Madrid or something like that, picked him up for a relatively low deal compared to the value that we spent on him. Another buster from the transfer market. Second last one, we also signed Antonio Donnarumma from some Greek team I'm not even going to try to pronounce, for just less than €1 million. We don't need to talk much about the fact that he was only signed because Gigio Donnarumma was at the side. We need to facilitate his contract extension and dealing with a pain in the arse in Mino Raiola, and to do that we had to sign Minabelli thought it was necessary to sign Donnarumma as a backup keeper, who ended up being the third keeper, put him on €1 million a year, and I think recently he's just walked on a free transfer, thank God. And he was just once, it just goes to show you how bad management was at the time, not only with signing transfers with players and putting them on bumper contracts. Even some contract renewals we couldn't even get done without having to sort of get these petty signings across the line. This is something that I remember we done it in the past with players like Kaká, and we signed his brother Di Gaio, and it was I got it because Di Gaio was going to put on low salary, barely play and that sort of stuff. It was to make him feel a bit happier, but Kaká was a stud. He was a stud. He was a great player, and putting Di Gaio on a very low contract wasn't really going to hurt us. But putting this guy on €1 million a year, when we look back at it, was just completely embarrassing, and not a good look from the Donnarumma family. And the last one we're going to look at is Fabio Barrini. We signed him from Sunderland. Sunderland on a 500,000 loan deal. I think we bought him for maybe 4 or 5 million euros on top of that. I don't. This is the thing as well. I don't get why we sign these players. What the hell were we thinking with these players? I don't know where he's going to play. We ended up playing as a makeshift left winger. Sometimes he played so many positions in the side, and fair play to him. He tried. The effort levels were there, but it was a signing we just didn't need to make. He was he was a professional, but at the same time he wasn't giving us that quality to step up as a side. Very limited in that aspect. We're going to wrap things up with that really, and look back at this transfer market as lessons learned, because you can have all the money that you want, and it's kind of sad, because if you gave us that 200 million euros right now, I believe Maldini would spend that very well. Obviously, it helps the fact if the team's already set up in the right way and you're adding a few chips to that sort of puzzle, puzzle piece that's already looking quite good. When you're starting from scratch and you're starting from year zero, it's quite hard to get it right, and there are going to be some sort of calculated risks along the way. And this is what happened that window. We went for quantity over quality, and we tried to pick up some quality, chips in that from players like Bonucci and Andrea Silva and Lucas Billiard, some experienced players, and none of them worked out. Other than Kessie, who, to be honest, has only really come into his own since Stefano Pioli has taken over, none of them have really worked out. And maybe Çalhanoğlu, you could probably argue that, but he's walked on a free transfer, and so has Kessie. So it kind of looked back at the whole transfer market entirely. I think it's 11 players signed there, over 200 million euros spent. What a failure of a transfer market. I don't think any fan can look at any transfer market that, especially we've done since that time, and go, how the hell has he done that? And Maldini should be signing more players, or especially the one that just came in the summer, when he signed a lot of players, loan deals and lower values, and he's negotiated down on players like Tonali. When we look back at that transfer market, that was fantastic work, and especially when you compare it to the 2017 one, it is for me the epitome of the banter era, because I get the banter era was when we had players like Kevin Constant and Bakayo Traore and signing them on these low deals and that sort of stuff. But when we had the money, we completely squandered it, and it's embarrassing to really think what we could have done if we had better management and things were run in a different direction, in the right direction. But anyway, guys, we're going to end things up with that. Hopefully by the time I do the next video, we have signed a new centre-back, or at least gotten 2 back-to-back wins against Genoa and Spezia. But until then, guys, I hope you've enjoyed going down memory lane and looking back at the mistakes of the past. Next time, guys, Forza Milan.